Hey y'all, Jamie here. Proud 55-year-old trans woman from New Orleans. So, where last I left off. Well, me and my newly married husband, because we had exchanged vows even though it wasn't legal, and rings and the whole 9 yards, y'all look. I guess I thought I was in love. Like, looking back now and knowing what grown love is now, yeah, I was in a bad spot, and I fell for charms that I should not have fallen for, and I believed him when I should not have believed him. By a long shot, I should not have believed him, okay? And, but I did. We stayed together. We were living on this street called Kellerack, and, we had an apartment upstairs, and it was across the hall from a girl that I worked with at the French Casino named Tammy Why Not. Okay. Now, Tammy Why Not, you would think would be trans with that name, but no, she was a cis girl. But Tammy Why Not looked trans, like really, really looked trans. Sister had a square jaw. Sister had tight looking breast implants on her chest that looked like two little grapefruits stuck on there. And she was skinny as a rail, no hips, no butt. And she was about 40 ish at that time, I would say, And she was dancing at the French Casino with the rest of us, And look, she pulled her weight. I mean, guys thought she was a dude all the time. I would be sitting with customers that would not know my tea and would ask me about her. Or they would say stuff like, oh, I feel like I'm watching my mother on stage because of her age. It's an ageist, very ageist situation there. Even though French Casino had some older dolls working there now, they had a few cis girls too, but they also had a lot of dolls working there. And a lot of them were like senior dolls that had been around a minute. But I fit in. I mean, I made my way and I fit into the group. And Tammy Why Not and I are working together. We're living across the hall from each other. And Mickey is coming by the French Casino when I'm working, and he sits there and like watches me dance on stage. This wasn't all the time, but he would come by and he would watch me dance on stage, and then he would do this stupid little thing that was from um, Friday the 13th. Okay, and Friday the 13th, when you hear that, yeah, he would do that to me when I would get off the stage. The goofball would sit there and do. Anyway, it was stupid. But so Tammy Why Not would get really, really drunk, y'all. And then she would come home and she would fall out of the cab and sister would fall out of the cab and roll onto the sidewalk, and I'd have to go out there and like get Mickey to help me pick her up and bring her up the stairs and get her in her apartment, in one piece. We look in New Orleans. If you're part of the crew, you look out for each other, even though you're probably screwing each other's men and you're probably crawling all over each other like hamsters in a cage, multiplying. The fact is that you still stood up for each other when outsiders messed with us. And so, or when we were in trouble. And Tammy would get so drunk that Tammy would start like thinking things that weren't really happening or weren't really there. Sister was a little, so she was a little touched. And so this one evening, y'all, I'm in my apartment. I'd gotten home from work before Tammy. She went out to the roundup and carrying on and drinking and blah, blah, blah. And she gets home, right? And she comes up the stairs and I hear banging around in her apartment, and me and Mickey are like, what the fuck is she doing now? And then she comes beating on my door. Comes across the hall, beating on my door, talking about, you fucking bitch, I know it was you. I know it was you. And see, there was another lady that lived next door to that building who owned like half the houses on the block, and her name was Alice. And we all called Alice the good sister because she was older. She was like she was one of the few first like post stops in the United States. The sister had her shit done way back. And anyway, Alice lived next door to the building. Tammy calls Alice and tells Alice that I have let snakes loose in her apartment, that her apartment is full of snakes and she can't go to bed and go in there because the snakes are going to get her. That's how fucked up she was, okay? So Alice comes over. Alice tries to smooth it over. She's like, Jamie, just, she's drunk, girl, just sister. She used to talk like that, sister. Look, sister. I'm telling you now, sister. Just let it go, sister. She don't know what she's saying, sister. You know, that kind of song and dance. So Alice leaves. She thinks everything's settled. You know, I think everything's over. Me and Mickey are crawling back in bed. And I hear, I still know it was you, you motherfucker. These snakes are everywhere. And she's beating on my door again. Well, y'all, at that point, I opened the door and I was like, Tammy, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. There are no snakes in your apartment. And I walked over there and I said, look, where are the snakes? Where are the snakes, girl? And then I stormed back across the hall to my apartment. At which point, sister follows me into my apartment and starts pointing her finger in my face. And I happen to look over and y'all, I'm not real terribly proud of this, but she pushed me. She pushed me so hard. And she started trying to in my face, which is never a good thing with me. Listen, I was a child of a severe abuse. You know, you don't scream in my face and you don't stick your finger in my face because I'm liable to react very, very, very badly. And I did. I grabbed a big can of Rave hairspray that was sitting on my table. And I grabbed that can of Rave hairspray, y'all, and I proceeded to whoop her ass. Sorry. I whooped her ass. I know she was drunk. I know it was wrong, but girl, she pushed me. And I beat her so bad back into her apartment with that can of hairspray that my can of hairspray was dented, y'all. And if you want to know what happened when I beat her back into her apartment, y'all know the routine. Be here tomorrow, and I will too. I love you all. I love you all for watching, and I love you for the comments. Talk to you later. Bye bye.